Federal Syntech, dangerous animal protection, 9mm versus 40 Smith & Wesson versus 45 ACP. I'm using my 5-inch barrels today, my 5-inch barrel M&P 9 and M&P 40, and my it's actually 5.3-inch Glock 41 and 45 ACP. So this ammunition is kind of interesting. It's called solid core, but it's from what I understand, it's a hard cast bullet and it is coated in their Syntech material. So our 9mm is a 147 grain rated at 1120 feet per second. Our 40 Smith & Wesson and our 45 ACP are both rated at 1000 feet per second. Our 40 Smith & Wesson is a 200 grain. Our 45 ACP is a 240 grain. So this is 3 of the 4 calibers that these come in. They come in a 10mm as well. I decided not to test the 10mm because really the marketing point of these are to kind of take a normal handgun that might not necessarily be something you would normally use for big game protection, dangerous animal protection, and to kind of make it work. So 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP, and the 10mm uses the same bullet as this 40 Smith & Wesson, but I figure in 10mm you actually have a lot better options for dangerous animal protection. So really I feel like these are the valid calibers to test it in: 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP, and the 9mm and the 45 are also, they are plus Ps. The 40 is not because it's a modern cartridge, it doesn't come in a plus P. So we're going to see how these do. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. I got some numbers on that screen because I shot a few rounds with my 22. Make sure my chronograph is angled right today to pick up reads. And what I'm going to do to test this is my big dangerous animal ballistic test. So what I got going on here, very similar to my normal ballistic test, but instead of denim and a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard, I have a thick layer of carpet and 1/2 inch of medium density fiberboard. So we're going to go through that thick carpet that's going to kind of represent hide, animal hide. We have 6 inches of clear ballistics, and clear ballistics is roughly 1-to-2 ratio, 2-to-1. Where 6 inches is kind of like 3 inches of skin and flesh. So we're going to go through 6 inches of clear ballistics, 1/2 inch medium density fiberboard. Then I got a whole bunch of clear ballistics here to hopefully catch these bullets. So we'll see how these compare for total penetration, and then I'm going to shoot at the steel target to see what kind of accuracy, recoil control I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 9mm. This is rated at 1120 feet per second. Let's see what we get with our 9mm+P, see how close we get to 1120 feet per second. $11.54, $11.54, $11.41, $11.48, $11.62. So we're above rated velocity. 40 Smith & Wesson, we were rated at 1000 feet per second with this. I believe that might be through a 4-inch barrel, as is the 9mm, but the 45 is rated through a 5-inch barrel. So let's see how close we get to 1000 feet per second with our 40 Smith & Wesson. 1005, 1012, 1009, 997, 1010. So that's pretty good. And you got to remember, this is a 200 grain, not a 180 grain or something. So pretty good velocity for that. Our 45 ACP, this is a 240 grain plus P rated at 1000 feet per second. So that's definitely a lot hotter than typical. So let's see what we get with our 45 ACP. See how close we get to 1000 feet per second with this. 884, 672, and that felt very, very, very light. Something's up with that. 765, 796, 770. I believe those numbers because the recoil impulse was very, very low. So even though I got very excited that we're above rated velocity on our 9mm+P, we're at rated velocity or a little bit above it with our 40. something's wrong with this. So that's really disappointing to see. So let's hit our ballistics gel block, see how these compare. All right, our big dangerous animal simulation here. A thick layer of carpet. We have 6 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/2 inch medium density fiberboard, and then a whole bunch of clear ballistics after that. Let's see what we get with our 9mm here. All right. Hit that with our 40 Smith & Wesson. All right, let's hit that with our 45 ACP. Let's go take a look. All right, so a little bit different results than what I thought I was going to see here. I always knew that 40 went really far, but obviously that 45 ACP, there's something really wrong with that, and you can see my chronograph wasn't lying by looking at these penetration results. Now, going through a 1/2 inch medium density fiberboard, that's pretty impressive to still get the penetration it got, but it's still kind of low. Now what we got going on here with our 9mm, we went pretty far for what it is. And you got to remember, going through a 1/2 inch medium density fiberboard, that might skew ballistics gel penetration by as much as, I don't know, 6 inches. So it went pretty far after going through all that. So we're right at 27 inches. I know sometimes camera parallax, when they start getting kind of far out, it always looks like it's at a different number than what I'm quoting. But yeah, we're right there at 27 inches with our 9mm. With our 45 ACP, it went right to about 22¼ inches and then kicked back a little bit. So that's honestly not that impressive, because Full Metal Jacket would easily do that. There's something wrong with the ammo, that they're not putting enough juice behind it. Now our 40 Smith & Wesson, I've seen a lot of penetration a lot of times with 40 Smith & Wesson, and this is spot on with what I normally see with it. Very, very far penetration. It goes beyond my 36 inch mark here, so I'm gonna have to measure this and see how much further we went. So we went about 6 3/4 inches past that 36. So, you know, 42 3/4 inches of penetration after going through a 1/2 inch of medium density fiberboard. So there's a clear winner here. You know, we're talking, you know, like 15 inches more than the 9mm. So we really can't discuss the 45 ACP in this test, because how, you know, there's something wrong with that. Ideally, if that would have penetrated to, you know, if it would have penetrated to a lot further depths, if we would have had that rated velocity. I've tested underwood that gets that rated velocity, and typically they're somewhere up here, kind of splitting the difference between the 9mm and the 45. So that's really bad to see that. Not very good at all. So what we're seeing here, from my opinion, it looks like you can take a 9mm and turn it into a decent defensive cartridge against a dangerous animal, and that's been not documented before. But our 40 Smith & Wesson is significantly better. I would much rather have this than this. So yeah, our 40 is our clear winner. Our 9mm is pretty good. Our 45, yeah, something wrong going on there. So let's take these out of block. We'll take a close-up look at them, and I'll shoot our steel, see what kind of practical accuracy I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at our bullets, our 9mm, our 40 Smith & Wesson, and our 45 ACP. There's our 9mm. Not really any deformation to that bullet. 40 Smith & Wesson, I don't really see any deformation with that either. So yeah, that's why I didn't really show any measurements. Going to remain the same basically. And our 45 ACP, the point isn't quite as flat as what I would like to see with something like this. You know, you kind of want to have a flatter point to go a little bit deeper. It is slightly rounded. And here is our 1/2-inch medium density fiberboard, 9mm impact, 40, 45, 9mm, 40, 45. Not really much that you can tell from looking at that. Not much you can tell from looking at this. But that's a close-up look at those bullets overall. All right, 12 yards from the target. I'm just going to get a good sight picture with these, line up my sights, pop off a few rounds, and see, you know, what the recoil control is for me, because these are all pretty warm loads. So 9mm, let's see what I can do with this. All right, a little bit of muzzle jump, but as far as actual felt recoil, it's pretty low. 40 Smith & Wesson. So that starts to slide out of my hand just a little bit when I'm not thinking about it too much. So it does take a little bit of thought process to bring it back down. And that's one of the advantages of 9mm. I think that's why a lot of people like it, is because you can kind of do everything wrong and it can shoot pretty well. As where you go up in caliber, you got to think about it a little bit. Now with this, I don't know what to expect with this. This is not very good load. So let's see what I can do with this. Ooh. That last shot felt a lot like there was something going on wrong there. That last shot, it just felt like barely any recoil. Very interesting. Let me back it up with these, see if I can continue to hit the target in kind of maybe a hunting scenario type simulation. All right, 75 yards from the target. Honestly, if you're talking about maybe using this as a hunting round, you know, doubling a defensive dangerous animal round as a hunting round, it actually makes a little bit of sense, because you know these bullets are designed to penetrate really well. If you're to make a hit on an animal with a traditional, maybe a hollow point or a full metal jacket or something like that, you might not get very good penetration because you lose a lot of velocity over distance. Typical 9mm, you might, you know, take it from 1,200 feet per second to under 1,000 at, you know, 75 to 100 yards, depending on the ammo. Something like this, even if we drop that velocity down pretty low, it still has a lot of mass and it should still penetrate an animal pretty well. So even 9mm would be an okay choice, in my opinion, because you'd still get that penetration. So let's see what I can do from 75 yards with these, see if I can make any hits on that steel target from 75 yards. 9mm. So some of them went kind of high from my point of aim. But other than that, I don't really know why I missed so many. But they did okay, honestly, from that distance. 40 Smith & Wesson. See what I can do with this. I'm not sure where those are hitting. Alright, so those misses were definitely high because I aimed basically below the target, and then I was able to hit a couple times. So for whatever reason, they're shifting up, and that's a phenomenon I see all the time. A lot of people say, well, if I shoot from this distance or whatever, it'll drop. And for me, they always kind of shoot high. I think that has to do with I'm not resting my hands on a bench or something. So, you know, you get a little more recoil and a little more muzzle jump, I would say. and I think that can result in the bullets going a little bit high. So 45 ACP. See what I can do with this stuff. One more. I wasn't trying with this. I was honestly just throwing them. And I think, you know, part of the reason why they're hitting is because there really was no muzzle. Well, I don't want to say muzzle jump. There was no harsh recoil that made me flinch at all. You know, obviously if this stuff's shooting at 700 feet per second, probably on average, yeah, very light recoil, so it's very easy to hit with something like this. And you know, 45 is pretty accurate at distance. So we got to take this out of the equation because there's something wrong with it. But as far as the 40 and the 9mm, those are pretty good. And this is one of those things here. I don't like to discuss it very much because it would kind of discredit all that I do to some degree with caliber debate. I mean, it doesn't, but to some small degree it does. A lot of things when it comes to handguns and rifles and anything else is you can kind of make one caliber into another caliber within reason. You can kind of do what a different caliber can do with a smaller caliber within reason. I mean, a 380 ACP will never be a 44 Magnum, but with the right load and enough barrel length, you can kind of make a 9mm do some of the stuff a 357 can do, and you can make a 40 Smith & Wesson do some of the stuff a 10mm can do, and so on and so forth. So really what this stuff is marketed as, from my opinion, I haven't read this, but what I believe is going on here is Federal's making an ammo that's a hard cast ammo that a lot of people will say, well, I'm not too worried about running that in my gun. I need something, you know, for personal protection against bears or something. I don't have the money to get a 10mm. I don't want to get a 10mm. I just want to carry my 9mm or my 40 or my 45. But I don't want to go to an Underwood ammo or a Buffalo Bore because I think that might be overpressured, even though they're really not. But people think this. They think it's overpressured, it'll ruin my gun, etc., etc. So Federal will come out with one. Well, I can trust Federal, so I can just get that ammo and run it in my 9mm and be safe against bears. So I think that's really what the marketing is of this, and to some degree it's correct. Yeah, you know, if you have a good enough 9mm and you're accurate enough with it, could you stop a grizzly bear? Well, yeah, because there's been documented cases of that. I wouldn't want to do it personally. I would not want to be in that situation because all the instances I've heard of that happening, it pretty much took the last round in the magazine of a high capacity magazine for it to finally work, which I don't want to be in that situation. Our 40 Smith & Wesson penetrated a lot better. I can actually look at this 40 and say, I think it pretty much did what any 10mm would do. A 10mm would hit a little harder and go maybe a little deeper, but you're getting like 90% of what a 10mm hard cast is with this 40 Smith & Wesson. So the 40 it's kind of perfect there. And obviously with our 45 ACP, if this 240 grain really were going 1,000 feet per second, we really would see really great performance. But you know, they loaded it so light and then tried to pass it off as 1,000 feet per second. I don't know why, but didn't do very well at all. So that's what you get today with our dangerous animal ballistic test. Interesting results. I would say our 9 and our 40 is okay, our 45 not. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.